back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I must say, one of the tremendous joys of winning the Stanley Cup that has been an actual extra benefit that I never considered are these conversations with old friends who are hockey friends. And the good old hockey game is the best game you can name. And I hear that song every night in every rink, including out in Las Vegas, where they don't even know what the hell that song is, in between all the celebrate good times, and here comes the hot stepper. We won the Stanley Cup, and Doug MacLean was the one-time head coach of the Baltimore Skipjacks. And, Dougie, I know in the aftermath of lifting the Skipjacks trophy over my head, in the Skipjacks jersey in the Stanley Cup, that you got a little bit of a chuckle and a smile because you wore that logo for a very short period of time. And in the aftermath of all of this, I've had to reevaluate everything about how I acted when I was 20 years old and you were the coach.
You know what? I got a chuckle at seeing the jersey and the logo because you don't really see it a whole lot. Although over the years, I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of those guys that played for us. Because while I was only the Skipjacks coach for a short period of time, we had a fun playoff run, and I knew the guys from the couple of years in Washington that played for them. So it's funny. I saw Robin Bawa being honored in Vancouver at center ice this year, and I've seen a lot of the kids do pretty well over the years, and I've had contact with a few of them. So it's always kind of nice to see that logo, and especially with Trotz there with you, which made it kind of special because he had a great history with the Blue Jackets, and he also rented my house for 2 years when he was coaching in Baltimore, and I really needed that at the time because cash flow was an issue.
Tell me, not in all sincerity now, because I had really had to think about this. I went back and I wrote my life and my youth. And Dougie, in the middle of all of this, Gene Ubriaco rolls into town between games 2 and 3, and I wound up in this incredible dinner out at Michael's Cafe for 4 hours with Ubi, telling stories, and of course Esposito and him, and the hockey stuff comes back to me. Tell the world what it was like to be the Skipjacks coach and taking that job for you. And I know you've chuckled about sleeping with the bus driver, and people have told me some crazy things you've said on Canadian television about it over the years, but it was not a very desirable job, right? And I guess when Barry landed that job, it was at the end. It had no fans. The team was going to move. Sort of everybody knew it. And, that was not a great spot for him to take over. It wasn't a great spot for you. Robbie Laird was miserable the whole time that I dealt with him, quite frankly. I mean, Terry and you were a little bit more civil, and Barry and I had but that was not a long-term job, right? Getting on buses for 6 months at a time in the southern part of this. Kenny Albert describes it as sort of hellish for a coach, right?
But you know what? It was funny. It happened under weird circumstances, to be quite honest, because I was Brian Murray's assistant in Washington, and Brian got fired. And they brought Terry Murray up to coach. So it was a really, really uncomfortable situation. No doubt about it. I mean, how bizarre is that? You get fired, and your brother takes over as the head coach.
I covered that press conference, Doug.
It was really uncomfortable. And what they did is they put me in Baltimore because Terry come up. So instead of firing me with Brian, they plugged me into Baltimore. But I'll tell you what, it was one of the most important few months of my career. Because I go to Baltimore, we had a pretty good team. We beat Adirondack in the first round. We really had a pretty good squad, and it was a great time for me to be a head coach. And although it was only a few months, it really was important because that season ended, and obviously I got fired in Baltimore because that was sort of a fake promotion at the time. So that's fine. I knew it all, and it worked out fine. But after that season, I get a call. I don't have a job, and I'm sitting at my cottage, and I get a call from the Philadelphia Flyers. We played Hershey a ton down the stretch in that year, and all of a sudden, Russ Farwell becomes a GM in Philadelphia, and Frank Mathers, and Dougie Yinkst, who ran Hershey, gave my name as a guy that would be a great coach for Hershey. So I end up going into Philadelphia, and they phoned me in the summer, and they said, okay, here's the deal. You come to Philly, and you're either going to be assistant coach to Paul Holmgren with the Flyers, or you get the Hershey job. It's one or the other if you come in and interview. So I go in, they offer me the Hershey job. I'm going to the airport all excited, getting the Hershey job, thinking this great. On the way to the airport, Brian Murray phones me, and he said, hey, I just got the Detroit job, and I want you to come with me to Detroit. So I go from no jobs to having 2 jobs in a matter of days. But it was because of the Baltimore experience that I got offered the Flyers job. So it was pretty cool. And it was an important stretch for me in Baltimore, and that's why I have such great memories of it.
Well, you know what? All these years later, and here I am underneath of an arena in Las Vegas at a National Hockey League Stanley Cup final that a Las Vegas team is playing in. I'm underneath. There's Kenny Albert over there. There's Nick Kyprios over there. There's Ole Kolzig off in the corner. And there's Barry Melrose over there with the earplug on, getting all shined up. And believe me, I bring it up with him, that Adirondack loss, every time. He doesn't like hearing about the time he said that you hit him with your purse and whatnot. But it is a funny story. 30 years later, the relationships of hockey. And Doug, I've flown out of this. I mean, when you were in Florida, I was around a little bit. You and Brian were down there, and the Rats on the ice and all that. But, I came back here, did sports radio. Barry and I were really the relationship I kept all those years. I went down to Nashville. I did Fang Fingers. I became a Predators fan, and David and my relationship and all that. But I covered football all these years. Getting back into hockey the last 5 years and in the locker rooms, I mean, it's really a special group of individuals. And I know Oshie and Ovechkin are drunk in fountains in D.C. and whatnot and having fun, and people are having some fun with that or whatnot. But what a serious group of integrity-based, character-based, hardworking, likable human beings they put together in this team. And I saw reflections of the other championship teams with the Ravens that I've covered over the years.
You know what? I think I've told you this before. I did the Washington Columbus series on TV in Canada, and my admiration for the Capitals grew in that series as the way they took off after Game 2. They could have been out of it. They in Game 3, Columbus hit the goalpost a few times, but all of a sudden they seemed to grow as a team at the end of Game 3. Holtby takes over. The top 6 started to dominate. Orpik became a real leader with Carlson, and I mean, you watch Juice as a 170-pounder play well. Orlov went to another level. I thought, gee, this team looks pretty good right now. Now, did I expect them to beat Pittsburgh? No, probably not. Did I expect them to beat Tampa? I thought they would give Tampa everything Tampa could handle, but they really took off as a group. And Barry did a heck of a job. He was more relaxed than I've ever seen him at playoff time. He hadn't had a lot of success at playoff time. And, let's not forget, last year in the Toronto series, he lost Ovechkin on the bench. He said, he played him 12 minutes. And all of a sudden this year, I've never seen Barry so focused, so relaxed. And I think it really helped the team. And I think a difference maker in the playoffs was Trotz. No doubt with how he handled this group, how adversity after adversity hit, and it didn't faze him. I watched him on the bench, and bad penalties were called, disallowed goals, goalie interference. He never got fazed by it, and I thought he was terrific throughout the playoffs, and good on him.
Well, and there is this whole contract situation that I probably would have eaten you or him or anybody up as younger men, right? I mean, singing for your supper when you've been doing this for 18 years and you win President's trophies and they sign your assistant from the outside from Pittsburgh into a longer deal. This is very, very sticky, and I know this is the third conversation you and I have had since the playoffs began. The first one began the night of Game 3 when they were down 0-2, and Trotz was the village idiot for having Grubauer in there the second game, and it's amazing how much it's changed and the narrative has changed. But the one thing that hasn't changed was he didn't have a contract, and that creates its own stickiness. I thought Carolina was sort of hanging around waiting to hire him. I thought the Rangers might have been doing that. There's all sorts of whispers about the Minnesota situation, and Doug, I mean, really, even into D.C. for Games 3 and 4, I was around the national media and the Canadian media. It's sort of the buzz of the whole industry of a coach winning on the way out the door, sort of, kind of, and can write his own ticket. This is a very interesting week for Barry Trotz, and I just don't mean drinking champagne with me.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is, what is going on here? Like, nobody can tell me this wasn't ugly this year. Nobody can tell me, because I'm not buying it, because I know for a fact Barry figured he was done there. And he was moving on, and maybe that's why he was so relaxed and felt comfortable about it, that it wasn't going to work there anymore, and that, they would like Reardon to be the head coach and blah, 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 all this. I like Todd. I've known him for a long time, but he was a lame duck coach, and people liked Barry, and so it became a bit of an issue. And if he would have lost Columbus in the first round, it was easy. Now he's complicated it. And you know what? So what really is the best thing for Barry? He's won a Stanley Cup. McClellan, does he really want Barry back, or does he want Todd? I mean, that's what's got to get sorted out. And they've got no choice. The fan base want him obviously now. That was mixed earlier in the season. There's no doubt about that, and especially early in the playoffs. So now the question is, how do they sort this out? And to me, he should stay. But it's going to be real interesting, and it is not going to be about money. I guarantee you that.
Well, I've told everyone that, too, because a lot of people in the media know that I know Trotzy, and I'm like, I don't know what he's really thinking, and I bet whatever he's thinking today is not what he was thinking a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago or certainly 2.5 months ago. I think situation changed. Here's the fascinating part, Dougie. I mean, Tony Robbins has been brought in on a coaching, and I'm thinking to myself, of all the people that come in there to create peace, right? I mean, Tony Robbins, but literally that's where Ted is in the middle of all of this, and now has to manage the aftermath of winning this thing. I mean, there's a whole different level of what happens after you win. They can't come out and lay a turd next year, no matter who the coach is, and all the players are coming back and getting paid. This thing gets heavier moving forward after you win. I know this is no time to discuss that, but, it'll be training camp before you blink. It'll be September.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, look, is this a little bit like what happened with Babcock in Detroit? I mean, Babcock leaves and goes to Toronto with a big contract. Don't ever kid yourself. He was done in Detroit. It was over, and he didn't win the Cup. He had just a competitive team and lost in the first round a few years in a row. So this is a little bit like Detroit were relieved that Babcock left. If the truth was really known, Toronto were excited to get him. So how does McClellan and Trotz handle this? So I don't know. To me, Ted Leonce has got to be involved in this as well. So what happens is owners get to hate coaches. No doubt about it. That happens in pro sports. And then they get to dislike their general manager eventually too. But in this case, it'll be interesting where Ted Leonce moves into this situation and how it gets handled. Does he just pay and tell McClellan, you guys work this out, or do they all agree to move on? It'll be very intriguing. But nobody can tell me that at Christmas, Barry Trotz wasn't totally comfortable himself that he was moving on.
Dougie, you had a lot of great players in your day, and I dare I say I wouldn't match one against the other, but certainly Ovechkin takes it to a different level when you take a job where you have a player like that who has not performed, had not gotten over the hump. You give a lot of credit to Barry. Where are we on the train of all of these players? 19 guys scoring goals, the likes of Eller stepping up. I mean, there's enough credit for everyone, but certainly Ovechkin waking up with a cup. We've seen things here over the weekend we haven't seen before. His greatness was not to be taken away without the cup, but this sort of seals the deal for him, right? This sort of checks that box for him.
You know what? For me, Ovechkin is eerily similar to the Yzerman situation in Detroit. I was with Yzerman for 5 years, and I watched him at playoff time, and I watched him really, really get challenged. He tried to do everything himself. He put too much pressure on himself, and he didn't have success. And he was a basket case at playoff time, and I really believe Ovi was a little bit like that. And when did Steve Yzerman go to a whole nother level? It was when the supporting cast became better, and he didn't have to do it himself. And he became a total team guy and became this great leader. To me, that's exactly what's going on with Ovi. I watched Ovi go through the neutral zone 1-on-3, 1-on-2, carrying the puck, trying to beat everybody all over the ice, and it wasn't working. So I think the maturing of the group has really helped Ovi the same as it did Yzerman. And Yzerman became one of the greatest leaders of all time and a big-time winner. Maybe the same thing happens with Ovi now.
Doug MacLean was the former head coach of the Baltimore Skipjacks back in the Trotz Capitals Poyle era. We are talking all things hockey. You can find him out at Doug MacLean on Twitter as well as at sportsnet.ca. Dougie, always a pleasure to visit with you, even more so after a Stanley Cup win. It was quite the scene out in Vegas, my friend.
Enjoy your day with the cup. I'm sure you'll get it.
I'm sure you'll get pictures. Hey, Dougie, can you create bail from PEI or from where you are? See you later. Doug MacLean, sportsnet.ca, the way to find him, and Doug MacLean out on Twitter, a man on the move and one of my favorite people. Boy, I've had a chance, and you can't wipe the smile off my face, as you can see on our Facebook Live and our YouTube WNST TV channel, but I had a chance to write about my life in hockey and my history in hockey, and certainly Dougie MacLean, a part of that. I hope you go and read it. I haven't had a lot of chances to write about my love of hockey. Maybe here and again, now and again, but I did that this week, kissing the Stanley Cup in Las Vegas with Barry Trotz and bringing it to Baltimore. It's up at WNST.net. All of our incredible hockey afterglow interviews are in the buyatoyota.com audio vault, 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. I want to give a shout out to our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're downloading the app and using that when you're pumping your gas, getting your coffee, stopping by for whatever it is you stop by Royal Farms for, whether it's the coffee, maybe a little ice cream treat, maybe some milk, maybe some refreshments, certainly some fried chicken, some subs, some snacks. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. That is the Kona blend right there. The morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's a great way to stay in touch. It's one of our great products each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. You can learn more and get some inspiration. I got inspired with Tony Robbins. You can get inspired by planetoftriumphs.com out on the web. Last but never least, when the Orioles finally deal Manny Machado, you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colossus will be here on Thursday, pimping the puck, raising the cup, talking some hockey, and I'm sure getting ready for U.S. Open golf this week. The World Cup is around the corner. I'll be immersed in that, doing a lot of sales, marketing efforts, and writing my Dear Orioles series all summer long. I'll be releasing that day by day. We'll also be reading it on the air. Luke and I will be discussing it as well as to how to fix the Orioles, which is where my focus goes the minute the parade ends and we bring the cup to Baltimore and the World Cup ends. And I don't know. We have a Triple Crown winner. Golden State won again. It's been a busy summer, and it's like June. Oh, by the way, the Ravens are going to play football this year, too. And Joe Flacco's flicking the football around all week. So Luke's out in Owings Mills. Our Twitter will be alive. All of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. You can reach me, nasty, at WNST.net. And I am available anywhere your mobile device takes you in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Stanley Cup hockey and Baltimore sports.